they're all finding the dots, actually. President Kikwete was mentioning how Tanzania was sort of like a refuge for Nelson Mandela before he was arrested and then sent to prison for 27 years. He said he mentioned that when Mr. Mandela visited in 1962, he left 2 books, I think, with the former minister. And then when he came back after he was freed from prison in 1995, those books were returned to him eventually. He mentioned then that Nelson Mandela and former President Julius Nyerere both worked closely to make Southern Africa what it is now. Everyone, of course, will find some connection to former President Nelson Mandela. Nigeria also makes a connection.
Definitely. We worked hard.
We did. Nigeria did play a big role. I mean, nobody's really talking about it, but Nigeria played a big role in South Africa's independence. I remember then in school, back then, before I became a journalist, I knew that some of our own fathers were contributing, some certain amounts to be taken back to South Africa for ANC activities and so on. We took the campaign. Our foreign policy is about freeing African countries that are held under the shackles of colonialism, and Nigeria has so far done very well in that regard. And I think South Africa realizes it. I mean, even though sometimes it seems they don't acknowledge it, but they do acknowledge Nigeria's presence. Don't forget, President Goodluck Jonathan was in the country in May this year, and he said very clearly there was no rivalry between the two countries. I mean, we're both strong economies in Africa. We're both doing very well. We're both championing the cause of placing Africa where it should be on the world stage. I mean, Africa at this point should not be seeking aid or seeking help or development from other countries. We should be given it. We should have solutions to our own problems. Those are bases for which diplomacy and unity and continuity grows, instead of going back to pick out what we did and what we did not do.
I know Ahmed Kachada's speech was quite an emotional one. He was his prison mate and a close friend, and he described Mandela as his brother. He said he couldn't imagine Mandela's strength. Mandela had enormous strength, and he always had a word to encourage him, to encourage the people. And for him, it's like, even though a journey has ended, there's so much, not just on Zuma, but on South Africans. What can they do to sustain this legacy and not just put their eyes on Zuma and expect him to be the change they want to see? They should also contribute as citizens as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Melinda. I mean, that's been the message all morning. That's been the message since last week. What do we do with Nelson Mandela's legacies? I mean, it's not enough to point out what he's done. It's not enough to point out, oh, this is a great man. He's a child of God, as Kenneth Kaunda said. He's been a great leader. He's one of a kind, as President Jacob Zuma said on Tuesday. What do we do with legacies that Mr. Mandela has laid for us? Many African leaders they admire him.
Yeah, they do. Can they do what he did? That's really the big shoes to fill.
Yeah, you don't have to go to prison.
I know. Definitely no. We don't need to do that now.
Surely it's about selflessness.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, that sort of selflessness exhibited by Nelson Mandela it had to be divine.
Definitely.
Definitely had to be divine. Forgiving those who put you in prison, and then when you come out, you say we're all brothers, we're all. I mean, this is a new and modern South Africa, and thanks to him, any one of us can go to South Africa and feel safe.
I'm sure it was when he came out and he was like reconciliation. A lot of leaders, especially those that helped in the work for freedom, would have said, no, what did you say? Did you say reconciliation? These people put you in prison for 27 years and we're talking about reconciliation, Rainbow Nation.
And it's taken time for the message to sink in. It's really taken time for the message to sink in, because of course it didn't happen overnight, of course, Melinda. It just didn't happen overnight. It took time, lots of messages, and then President Mandela, of course, laid this example of a selfless leader. He wasn't seeking power. I felt personally that he probably never wanted to be president, but he felt it was something he had to do. He had to do, and it really was a good thing that he was president immediately after he came out of prison. If it was someone else, I'm sure that the South Africa we know today would not be the South Africa that we have. That message of reconciliation is very important, I mean, for South Africa. If you begin to count the wrongs that have been done against the blacks, I mean, it will never end.
Now, one of his grandchildren, Nandi Mandela, also showed us another interesting side to Mandela. She spoke on behalf of the family, and she said he was a disciplinarian. Of course, we respect him to be a disciplinarian. And, he told jokes at the tables, and, just showed us another side of Mandela that some of us may not have known about.
I know Mandela had a good sense of humor, because I'm speaking about him in the present, but he is in the past now, but his spirit still lives on. He does have, he did have a good sense of humor. He really did have a good. You remember the time he said he was taking a break off public life and saying that no one should call him. Don't call me, I'll call you, and we all laughed about it. I mean, that's just the kind of, it's the way he applied these lessons and drove his message home. Even through humor, he drove his message home. And all the people who met him all had, I mean, you have pictures of people laughing with him.
Yeah, they did.
And he loved children.
Oh, he did. And he had a lot of them as well, grandchildren, at least to console him. A lot of grandchildren.
But at 95, I think Nelson Mandela has done very well. I mean, if you check all of the people who went to prison at that time, they all lived pretty long lives, I would say, pretty long lives. I remember speaking to a former Rivonia trial prisoner, Dennis Goldberg, who's 80, I believe. Yeah, he's 80 this year. And he's still able to walk on his own, though with crutches, though, but he still looks, I mean, he looks 70 to me.
Wow.
They're all sort of fit, more fit than most of us are. And I said, okay, what is it about? Is it prison? Is it the regimen? I mean, or is it that you prepared your mind to live in a certain way? And he said, it could be prison also, but it's also because, well, your diet is regulated. I mean, you don't have much to eat anyway. You don't have the luxuries of having chocolate and milk every morning or anything. So you come out, and then of course you have the regular exercises. So you come out of prison, and some of the things you take with you, the regular exercise, the being careful about what you eat, not letting anything burden you. I mean, they were there long enough to know that they couldn't do anything about anything out there in the world except, speak what was right and speak on behalf of the people and all of that. So.
What's happening in Qunu in South Africa. I'm hoping we'll be getting a closer shot soon so that we'll know what's happening on the ground. But I believe everything that is happening right now, it's just in honor of a great man who has taught lives and who lives on, as Amarachi put it, because we can't describe him. It's very difficult for you to describe Mandela in the past tense, because
I keep mixing my tenses. I keep mixing my tenses.
He is. I know.
Let's just say he is, because I mean his spirit lives on. So he is.
And you notice now it's a day. It's clear skies in Qunu, unlike when it was raining cats and dogs. The weather agrees with him, don't you think?
Oh yeah. But you know what Jakaya Kikwete said. President Jakaya Kikwete, the Tanzanian president, said that when it rains, I mean, when a great man goes home, the weather, of course, changes. But clouds have been gathering over Qunu all morning. It might rain later, but I don't know.
Now, at least, the skies are clear, even though hearts are heavy.
Maybe, as we say in Africa, the gods must be, they must have taken it easy with people
they're definitely smiling.
And it rained heavily on Tuesday.
I remember people braced the rains just to be there, and it showed that their love and their passion, they were not even thinking about it, because I remember the performance by Kirk Franklin, and they were trying to use the umbrella to protect him from the rain, but he just kept on singing, and he was ecstatic, and it just...
that's just the effect that Mandela has on you. I mean, that's just the effect. Just watching videos of him, listening to stories about his life, listening to some of his speeches and so on, it just feels, it warms you, it practically warms your heart. And you get up feeling like, what can I do? What should I do?
How can I be a better person?
It inspires you. His life inspires you. I mean, well, people could say next to Jesus, this could be the next man. But really, today has been more somber than Tuesday. If you notice that there's been no dancing or singing.
It's not time for dancing.
Exactly, that accompanied the event on Tuesday, where people were more joyful, celebrating his life and remembering his legacies and so on. I guess the reality that this is the last they will see of him. The next time they will see him, of course, will be in pictures and videos, in speeches of audios and videos that have been made of him in the past.
Väldigt långt ifrån en traditionell begravning. Så det har vi lärt oss. Men det innebär ju inte att den inte var fin för det. Det viktiga är ju att de människor som står nära Mandela
Sändning.
Han precis genom tulltrafik. Jag står här nu, jag står och tittar ner över dalen, över den här vita domen som är tömd och upp mot den här begravningsplatsen där jag förmodar att den här privata sändningen går. Man har ju brutit tv-sändningarna här i Sydafrika också. Man kan se, de sänder inte så att säga hela den Nej, det är väldigt den här byn, i normala fall så är det nog rena kaoset. Nedanför mig här är ett stort fält där det står massor med bilar och det är några stora fält som man har satt upp och en stor bildskärm och det är säkert för alla de här gästerna som inte var med på första delen av själva jordfesten. Jag kan tänka mig att man utfodrar dem där och släpper den bussarna och bara tillbaka till flygplatsen i London. Och jag ser på vägen här ha det bra.
Seas where